Hey everybody, welcome back to Pro AV today. One of the conversations that I love having all the time is learning and understanding new ways that technology we've used for a long time is being able to be reused and repurposed and elevated in other scenarios. One of those technologies is the traditional assisted listening devices, right? Typically, you would think for maybe someone that was hard of hearing, or maybe needed to be able to hear an interpreter, or a lecturer from far away. But as we grow as a community, that technology is being leveraged in so many different ways, not only creatively, but to drive accessibility and drive initiatives like DEI. And I didn't want to be the expert on this one because I know enough to be dangerous, but I wanted to bring someone in that we could ask questions about this specifically and dig in a little bit deeper. And that's Kim Franklin over at Listen Tech. Kim, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, Kim, so for those folks who may not know you, you're over on the Listen Tech team. Just give us a high level kind of explanation of kind of some of the things that you guys help enable over on the Listen Tech world.
So at Listen Technologies, we started in assistive listening, and that really was our bread and butter for a long time. We believe that everyone deserves the same great experience. So the very kind of root of Listen did start with accessibility initiatives, and we found over the years that, as you've mentioned, assistive listening goes beyond hearing assistance, right? It goes beyond meeting the letter of the law or the ADA, and the more people get out and experience the world around them, the more noise, the more you realize that the need for hearing assistance is everywhere, right? So we develop technology that helps in environments where assistive listening is required, as well as environments where you just might be challenged to hear because it's noisy, it's loud, you need you're on a tour, there's a noise, there's chatter. So for all different kinds of things beyond assistive listening.
Well, Kim, we'll start there, right? We talked about some of the new places and advancements in technology. We'll probably talk about more the technology side a little bit later in the show. But what are some of the markets specifically and applications that you've seen some of these traditionally assisted listening devices evolve into?
So the pandemic, and more specifically, some of the mandates brought on by the pandemic, really kind of brought to light the challenge or the need for hearing with clarity. One application that you never really would have thought of until we were all challenged with wearing masks and staying physically, distanced apart from each other, was even on as simple as like a manufacturing plant, where typically stations are side by side. So if somebody has a problem, they can turn to their colleague, say, hey, can you help me figure this out? Well, once those mandates were in place and people had to stay farther apart, it became more difficult to hear, especially if there was background noise such as a machinery or chatter or just other things going on that made it harder to hear. And if someone's wearing a mask and you can't read their lips, again, that really impacts clarity. So it became obvious that for safety reasons, technology needed to be utilized so that people could communicate and move work forward.
Well, I love that you bring up the word clarity, right? And what's interesting is about the time of the pandemic, uh, you can go back and look at statistics from like Netflix and folks like that, but the rise of captions actually continued to grow as well, right? Not necessarily because folks were more hard of hearing than they previously were, but clarity became such an important focus, right? Being
Mhm.
able to determine the tone, the tonality, maybe the dialect, things like that. Clarity of audio and understanding became so important. What are some of the ways that you've seen some of those end user demands drive some of these applications?
I think more and more. I think with the younger generations, and now the generations that are buying and the technology for our parents, as our parents are aging, right? I mean, I had the experience of my parents going into an assistive living center a couple years ago, and the children, we were the ones making that decision, so we were the ones demanding that they have access to all the different things to make their experience better. But I think we're seeing that beyond just the aging populations, right? I mean, the younger generations want equitable experiences, and then they want to go on a tour and hear in their native language, or they want to take their grandparents. Their grandparents might not speak English or might not speak as well, so they want their grandparents to have the tour in their native language and the children to have it in English, but they're hearing the same content, right? So I think that the generations are driving some of this, and I think some of the younger generations that are a little more bold in asking for what they want and demanding an equitable experience has really changed where we're seeing technology used.
I love so much that you bring that up too, and I love to see how technology has enabled that. Right, normally when you go back and
Mhm.
look at assisted listening or audio ecosystems, they've been sort of closed ecosystems, right? Whether it's a transmitter and then kind of some portable receivers and someone with a microphone or whatever. But now you're seeing those ecosystems open up, whether it's Bluetooth based or Wi-Fi based. How are some of
Mhm.
these ubiquitous technologies being leveraged to help expand some of those capabilities instead of just everything having to be closed ecosystem?
I think the popularity of the smartphone, right? And I don't remember the statistic, but it's something like 11 billion smartphones are owned worldwide. And I think the BYOD, kind of I guess the inception of BYOD and people feeling more comfortable on these devices, and everybody is connected to a phone. I mean, it used to be that if you had to check out an assistive listening device from a counter, it was a big kind of clunky receiver and everybody knew. It's not
Right,
discreet,
trying
right?
to figure
Everybody
out where to
sees it, everybody.
click
So
it and
now
yeah.
exactly. But now everybody wears earbuds or a headphone and they're always looking at their phone or carrying their phone for so seeing somebody with an earbud in is not necessarily doesn't really draw attention to them. And I feel more comfortable on my smartphone so I can navigate it. I can find my audio settings, I can choose a channel. So I think the smartphone technology has helped push that along because people now have access where they didn't before, right? With the new audio over Wi-Fi technologies, if it's provided in the venue, you can simply download an app and connect to the audio on your phone. Or if my parents are there and they're not as comfortable on their smartphone, they might need to check out a receiver, but we have more options. So I think that technology in itself has just kind of expanded access to people that normally probably wouldn't check out a receiver because they feel uncomfortable or they're embarrassed. But now they say, well, if I can hear this artist or I can hear this play with more clarity and nobody knows, why not?
Exactly. And that's such an interesting driver too, right? Is the desires of the end user who are looking to help elevate
Mhm.
that experience, right? In many cases, it's just seeking that additional clarity, right? It's easy to talk over somebody in a museum, and I can yell, but you talk about being able to listen with a lot more intentionality, clarity, things like that. It's so important. And you talked about kind of the upcoming generation of users. One of the things, and this is globally too in our industry, there's a renewed focus a little bit on DEI, right? I would say a lot bit, right?
Mhm.
And part of that is accessibility and equity. And when you think about audio is in many ways the most paramount form of communication, right? You look back, and we could jump back thousands of years, but
Mhm.
the oral tradition or the audible tradition was how stories were passed along to folks, right? And in many ways we're replicating that now as a society where we're able to have conversations with folks. What are some of the ways that you see audio play into some of these DEI initiatives and making sure that folks, whether it's in the enterprise, whether it's in creative situations, have access to some of these tools?
I think that again, I think a lot of this was kind of, I guess, sparked by the pandemic and a lot of people realizing that they didn't have access to audio or equitable experiences. So I think that some, big Fortune 500 companies are standardizing on audio so that if somebody does visit their facility, they can take them on a tour, whether they have a language barrier or need a hearing assistance, they can take them around the building and they can experience the tour like everybody else. But I also think employees, right, demand equitable experiences. They want to be able to sit in the break room and be able to listen to a channel in the language of their preference, or they want to sit in the back. They're not necessarily close to the audio source. So I think it's kind of everything's coming together, and we expect those better experiences everywhere we go, not just at a play or not just at a stadium or not just, but we also expect that at work and we expect that at church, right? So again, I think there's a couple things all coming together at the same time. I think there's demand. People are demanding better experiences. I think that companies see the importance of providing safety and those experiences at work. We spend so much time at work, right? And and you think during the pandemic, I can remember thinking when I was wearing a mask and I attended a conference on how tired I was at the end of
Yeah.
the day because I was straining to hear, right? And when you don't have the ability to read lips and you can't hear with clarity, it really does become exhausting, right? And I think that employers see the need for clarity because it does help people, it makes them more efficient and makes work better and easier.
I love hearing that, and I love hearing how that really extends into the enterprise world as well. But I want to jump just for a second from the clarity side of the world to the creative side of the world. I remember I was in a
Mhm.
museum recently where we had some devices plugged in, and as we would walk from section to section, the audio from this section would fade out, and as I would walk closer to the other exhibit, that audio would
Mhm.
fade in, right, almost as if there were hyper targeted speakers at me. What are some of the
Mhm.
ways that you're seeing these audio devices and audio tools being used creatively, even just for above and beyond traditional clarity applications?
One thing that's important to us, and in fact, it's part of our value proposition, is providing seamless audio experiences, and that's exactly what you described, right? Being able to walk from exhibit to exhibit and have the audio trigger based on proximity. So that's one of the big things that's important to us is providing seamless experience so our guests don't have to do anything, or even a student. Imagine going from a lecture hall to a classroom and walking in and having that audio triggered based on proximity, right? So it's something that was set up by the system administrator. So the student doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to change channels. They don't have to fumble with their phone. They simply walk from place to place and the audio is triggered. So I think that that to me is one of the most exciting advances in technology is being able to provide experiences that are seamless and that just kind of happen, right? I think that to me that's kind of where the magic happens.
Well, Kim, I love your insight because you've been doing this for a while with the Listen Tech folks, and you've been able to really dig into specific niches and verticals and have conversations
Mhm.
that a lot of folks in the industry aren't able to have. So we're gonna have to find a way to have you back on the show, whether or not we're talking about Wi-Fi connectivity and audio devices, maybe even Bluetooth. The pro audio folks might yell at me if I have an episode on Bluetooth. I don't know. We
Sounds
appreciate you
great.
coming on the show so much, Kim. Thanks for giving us your time today.
Thank you. Have a great
And
day.
thank you all for joining us today on Pro AV Today. Be sure to tune in next time.